It's Angel Encounters here on Swedenborg Live. So great to have y'all joining us as we see if we can't, see life as it actually is and watch that improve our experience of life. I'm here. I'll be your host. My name is Curtis Childs, and I'm honored to get to do that with all of you. And with me on the computer or on your phone is going to be a really great selection of awesome people to conversate with. So would you all just chime in for a second and let everyone know who and what you are?
Hey there, I am Cara Dom, the Latin consultant and one of the team members that responds to your comments. Happy to be here.
Hello, I'm Karin Childs, community manager and writer, and I'm so glad to be back. I was absent for a few weeks because we were moving from Southeast Michigan to Illinois, but now we're settled and I'm happy to be here.
Right.
Nice. And I'm Chelsea Odner, a writer for Swedenborg and Life.
Okay, so everybody, maybe this is your first time, so I'll tell you how to play the game. Go into the chat on YouTube and write in questions, and we will answer them. We will try. You'll actually see us in a moment get a second shot at answering a question we couldn't quite answer last time. So that will be a good sense of closure and good setup for all of you to realize, oh, I may not get a full answer the first time around. If you want to support us, we're not for profit, and we're not actually, not to spill the beans, but we're not going to be here the next couple of weeks. So we've got to make a real impact here today. We've got a stretch goal. We want to try to raise $393 during this podcast. Can we do it? And if we do, that money goes to supporting all this programming, but also as a little immediate thank you, we'll tack an extra 15 minutes of pure Q&A bliss on the end of this program. So again, $393, go to offtheleft.com/donate. You'll see the thermometer go up. We'll thank you on air. It's going to be really good. That $393 is in honor of our related quote today, which is Secrets of Heaven, $393. It goes like this. Let's get out of our natural mode of thinking into our spiritual mode of thinking. What do we got here? The people of the earliest church were such that they acknowledged no other faith than faith from love. Heavenly angels are the same way. It was foreseen, though, that the human race would not maintain this character, but would split faith off from love for the Lord and make it into a doctrine of its own. So it was also provided that faith would indeed be split off, but in such a way that through it or through a knowledge of it, the Lord would give us a heart for charity. In this way, knowledge or hearing the message would come first. Then through that knowledge or hearing the Lord would give us the gift of charity, that is, love for our neighbor and mercy. There's our compass. Why are we trying to learn all this material? It's so that God can get our stubborn hearts to open up to a little bit of a love for our fellow human beings. Okay, so let's take a listen to the pulse of the community before we take these new questions, because every week we put out a little question to you, and we like to hear your responses to it before we go into our own. So let's get our mood set again. This is the question that we put out. Can you recall a time when you felt that you received some kind of message or guidance that led to positive changes in your life? Which is right related to this quote. When did something you learned or that was put on you make something good? So Karin, what did people have to say?
Here are a few of the wonderful answers that came in. One said, just recently discovered an emotion greater than love. It's home. That's cool. Just that feeling of being where you belong. Literally every day I am guided. Sometimes it is as simple as remembering how very blessed I am through my home life, friends, and work when so many are struggling, especially in our crazy mixed up world right now. Cool. Gratitude always gets us there. Boarded a train, heavy heart going home when I heard, I do not expect you to socialize with child abusers. Can I just say the weight of one of my burdens was lifted? What a journey. God speaks to many modern day prophets. Truth, love, light. Thank God for Off the Left Eye. Wow. I suffer with depression, and the Lord spoke to me once. I wrote, I'm done with you, and I tried to commit suicide, then woke to the Lord stating, you might be done with me. I am not done with you. I believe it was the Lord who spoke and kept me alive 18 years ago. Wow, that's amazing. Yes, many years ago, I was whining because I thought my Christian life wasn't going anywhere. I was on a boat and saw a child who was so tiresome because he was just screaming and whining and his mother didn't do anything. And then it struck me, I was that kid. Afterwards, I tried to be more grateful. Oh, that's cool.
Glass house.
Yes. I know to be loud and yell, but without the anger. At rare times when I had felt anger, I got a snapshot of the representation of how anger pulls the possibilities of bad things entering my reality if I continue to feed that energy. It is like the idea of where the momentum of feeding that vibration can direct my life. I feel blessed to be able to capture such spiritual messages. Yeah, that's a great insight that came. And finally, this one. Many years ago, when my life was a real struggle, I prayed to God while walking to my car. Dear God, I'm close to the limit of how much more I can take now. You have to give me a sign. Show me you are there because soon I can't take anymore and my children need me. Please give me hope and strength. Then I opened the door, sat down in the car and started the engine. Immediately, the radio started playing and the volume was really high. The first words I heard were Mariah Carey singing, "There is an answer if you reach into your soul." I just sat there listening to the whole song while tears of wonder, hope, and happiness ran down my cheeks. This moment was life-turning for me. I've always believed in God. After that, I more than believe. Wow, yeah, sometimes a song on the radio can really feel very personal, like a personal messages. That's awesome. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thanks so much for opening up about that. If you want to hear Chelsea and I discuss the very same thing, answer that question, we have our episode of Inside Off the Left Eye podcast coming out this Sunday, which is Christmas edition, A Happy Christmas for Swedenborg in 1749. Yeah, how could you miss it? Okay, our first question, as I said, is going to be a holdover from last week. I'm a little nervous about this because I like setting the bar really low and not having people expect that their question will be fully answered. But this time, in the interim, a question that we took a few shots at but didn't have any, some real research in front of us. Chelsea has gone and dug up a few more facts about this. So this, just to remind everyone, this was from Witch of the Wildwood last week, who asked, does Swedenborg mention anything about menstruation? I know in the Bible it says a woman is unclean because she menstruates. What might be the meaning of that? So yeah, Chelsea, what did you find to augment our answer-ish that we did last week?
Yeah, well, I was just so curious to know, what does Swedenborg say about it? And what could I look up to see about that, uncleanness? Which we did talk about last week, how there's so many things are called unclean in Leviticus. But does Swedenborg talk specifically about the, menstruation and how a woman is unclean and what does that mean? And I found one instance, and this might be the only instance. I didn't do a huge search, but this one main instance, we're lucky to have it because it comes from this story of when Jacob is leaving Laban. This is in the book of Genesis in chapter 31, I think. And he has his two wives, Leah and Rachel, and he's sort of running away from Laban with his family and his livestock and everything. And Rachel steals her dad's gods, like these figurines. And Laban comes to look for them and she hides them under herself. And Laban isn't allowed to find them because she says, I'm in the way of women. So sorry, you can't touch me or anything that I'm touching because we're unclean. So first of all, I think that's such a hilarious instance of, Rachel using the whole fact that menstruation is considered unclean to her advantage in this situation. But so Swedenborg, his book, Secrets of Heaven, goes through all the chapters of Genesis. And so since Rachel says how, for the way of women is upon me, that's how she puts it to her dad, Laban, Swedenborg says, what does this verse mean? And so here's what he says. It's from Secrets of Heaven 4161. And he says, for the way of women is upon me means that as yet they were among things that were unclean. This is clear from the meaning of the way of women as uncleanness. But now here's where it gets the spiritual level. He says, interior truths are said to be among things that are unclean when they are among facts which do not as yet correspond, that is, which are not in harmony with them. Such things are removed when a person is being made clean, that is, when being regenerated. And so to me, what I get from that is that, it makes so much sense that the cycle of menstruation is really a picture of our regeneration, and that we're in this constant evolution of, especially the nature of truth, like interior truth. There's truths that work for us for a time in our spiritual life, and then they kind of get let go of. You have to let go of things that no longer serve you, and then in their place you build up a new sort of cache of truth that is going to help you in your next phase, and then those ideas change. There's this just cyclical element of our spiritual growth, and so it's not so much about this uncleanness rather than this ongoing process of becoming clean, of becoming regenerated, and so this turnover that naturally happens. So I thought that was such an interesting insight to get, and was excited to get to kind of follow up with everybody here to touch on it again and give a little more context for Witch of the Wildwood's question.
Cool.
Sure. Yeah, I love it. That's cool, and a great example of the magic of correspondences. That what this confusing weird story, what does it mean? And then of course, that makes sense. Actually, that makes sense. It's like emotionally fulfilling, and it points toward this good picture of life. So cool. Thanks so much, Chelsea and Witch of the Wildwood. Hope you enjoyed that. If you're back, or if you see this, if not, the rest of you tell the witch we said hello. Okay. So our next question is from Sean Smith, who asks, I've been trying to explain to someone very important what love really is, and it seems she wants to cling to doctrine. Question, we were just talking about this. This is very on topic. Question, will the ego always lash out when exposed? So why aren't, you'd think it's love, right? It's so great, there's love. Why does Swedenborg have to harp on it so much, that love is what should drive things instead of knowledge or ideas? How does that strike everybody? I'll leave it at that. Karin, you want to give us an opening salvo?
The phrase lashing out makes me think of just like Chelsea was talking about, we go through this cycle throughout our lives of holding on to a certain way of understanding life and understanding truth, and that serves us for a while, but we are supposed to keep upgrading that, keep letting go of ideas in favor of deeper ideas and things. But that is often, it's interesting that menstruation is not a pleasant week of our lives as women. It's difficult. It's difficult to let go of ideas that have been informing you how to live and how life is, as far as you understand. And so it is, if a person isn't ready to let go of a certain way of thinking, there is going to be a reaction. And yes, it is an ego reaction, because we hold on to a certain way of understanding, and our ego doesn't like to let go of that because it's become attached. And yet we all have to realize that we all have to be open to okay, maybe the way I'm understanding it, there might be more, or I might need to go deeper at some point. And we do need to be continually being ready to sort of shed one way of understanding things and go a little deeper. So I would say it is a natural reaction, and that we all do it. And if someone is reacting negatively to some ideas you're offering, that would mean she's not ready for whatever reason. And I think God really understands that with us too. It understands that it doesn't work to sort of push us out of our old way of thinking. The timing has to be right, but you still can offer, and those seeds can stay in the mind of any person you're talking to. And who knows, later that person might be ready and won't be reactive to it. So there's some thoughts.
I love the seed imagery, that things of the mind are complicated and slow moving, try to get something to grow. And I think I have a special insight into that metaphor, being a not very good gardener. it's tough to get anything to grow. And it takes like this year, didn't make much progress. Next year, I made a little bit and I took a step back. So that's how the mind is. Hey, before we kick it to the next person, I want to say thanks to John. John made a donation. We are now 12% of the way to our goal. It can be done. Our stretch goal, the impossible goal. They laughed at us for making this goal. Thanks so much. Either way, John, your contribution is going to go towards making our programming possible. So thanks so much. Go to offthelepteye.com/donate if you want to help us get there. So yeah, other thoughts, Chelsea?
I just love what Karin was saying, and so this might be thinking about it from a slightly different angle, but because I don't know exactly if this will feel relevant, but it's what comes to mind when I think about, will the ego always lash out when exposed? And I think yes, that is probably just the case, because something that, as Swedenborg calls it, are that sense of self, like our lower self, that sort of ego instinct, he'll call it our proprium, that when it sort of acts of its own accord, that lashing out that's how it knows how to operate. It doesn't know how to do anything else. But as we, so I guess even Swedenborg says, even angels get that ego stuff kicked up in them, but there's an awareness that's there with it that isn't just, there's people talk about the importance of pausing and having a practice of pausing, because it helps us learn that we can have this impulse, to lash out or something, but then we learn how to grow the space between an impulse and whether we choose to act on it or not. And so I think of our whole process is, that we don't need to shame ourselves or something, that we've been, spiritually working on ourselves or whatever for years, and a decade down the road we're still having the same kind of knee-jerk reaction when somebody does something a certain way or presses our buttons or something. Like, all of those same thoughts are usually right at the ready to kind of come out, but we can just pause and have that not mean necessarily that that's true, that that's going to inform the way we're going to act in this moment or whatever. So eventually the ego might always be lashing out sort of inside, but it doesn't have the power over us to drive our actions necessarily. And so that we sort of learn, oh yeah, this is my sense of self kind of doing its thing that it knows how to do best. And, but I'm going to, mitigate that with these other ideas that are going to help me. Oh yeah, this is how I want to engage in a relationship, or, et cetera. And that we're kind of on is learning how to work with that.
There's a quote by some Zen master, I don't know their name, but the best way to control cow and sheep is to give them a big field to graze in. I feel like that fits here, that you're making the very reasonable assertion that if you expect yourself to have, I have no ego reaction when someone questions something that I hold dear. It's unrealistic, but it's more about what you're saying, which I love, which is, okay, that's there, and I noticed it, and I can just try to hold the reins a bit, enough that I'm not going to ruin this relationship or something. So I love it. Cara, do you have any thoughts about the whole thing?
My thoughts are directed to the first half of the comment about doctrine. So I guess Sean means previously held ideas of what her faith is, or whoever this person is, what faith is. But in the Swedenborg world, the top of the doctrine is that God is love itself. And that's what he created us for him to be able to love us and for us to be able to love each other. So you just could say that that love is a doctrinal point in some constructions.
That's right. They don't put love in a second category. It's the best. It is the doctrine. It is the great commandment. I
want to add. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Yep.
I just wanted to add one thing. As a moderator for many years on the channel, I've come to recognize that if someone is very reactive to some ideas we're sharing or something, and is clinging to some doctrine, it helps me to remember that they feel safe in this doctrine and might feel threatened by, suggestion to let that go. And so that just helps me understand them better and be, less frustrated or more patient and more understanding that this is something dear to them and feels very safe. And it could feel scary to be encouraged out of that, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to talk about too. I feel like my ego will lash out for one of two reasons. If you're introducing an idea that I don't like, either it's because that idea is threatening my sense of intelligence and being right. If you're saying I'm wrong on something and there's sort of a self-centered, well, that's not right because I didn't say that. Or the other hand is I will react if I feel like an idea is dangerous to something that's good. I was just watching a documentary about Scientology. Have any of you guys seen this? It's the Leah Remini from King of Queens used to be in Scientology and now she's out. And I don't know any Scientologists. I don't know. But she's saying, like, this was a very oppressive, abusive organization. And when you get out of it, your family and friends won't talk to you. And there was a guy, they interviewed somebody who had been in there and he was saying that, yeah, his mom won't talk to him, even though they'd just had their first grandchild, because he left the organization and she believes that her eternity is at stake if she talks to him because he's out of the church and that's wrong. So in that regard, you can have people who are worried. Oh, because we on this channel, we get it all the time. We'll tell people, look, hell is a state of mind that you're choosing. God does not condemn you there. And some people think that's really dangerous because what if we're wrong and God really sends us to hell? So it could be that they believe that, because there's some pretty serious threats that religions make. So it's a really scary thing to leave. Even myself sitting here really feeling like Swedenborg's picture of God is just what matches up with reality. It's got to be true. Every once in a while, I get this wave of wow, I hope there's not really that angry God and I'm on the wrong side of it. It's just, I think that's why it's such a potent tool of control, is because it's the most terrifying thing you can imagine. So it could be, I guess I'd say that there's a ego, but there's also a zeal or a good reason to, if you genuinely believe that's a dangerous idea, you'll lash out as well. And you don't always know the difference. So somebody can be either sick, if you think about the categories Jesus gives of fhungry, lonely, sick, whatever when he talks about I was hungry and you fed me, I was naked and you clothed me. Swedenborg says that's about all the different states we can be in. So we can be sick, where we believe evil, we have an ego around ourselves and that's why we lash out, or we can be prisoners, which is trapped in these ideas that we think are true, even though we have a good heart. So you can't know at first, is it from a good heart or from a selfish heart or anything in between. So, okay, let's do another one. It's going great. Go to youtube.com/donate. Go to offthelefti.com/donate. Help us make our stretch goal, last goal of 2020. Let us do what we do. Okay, so this is from Viabib Dablu, who asks, please guide how to get an answer from God. For example, whether to go for a particular business deal or not. Thanks in advance. If we get this right, we get a cut of this deal, I'm sure. So what can we get that? I mean, that would be nice. What do you think? Yeah, Karin.
Oh, okay. I'll just get things started. Wouldn't we all love to just get told exactly what to do when there's decisions ahead? And there can be times in life where you kind of feel like you get a pretty strong message, but I think from what I understand, the way things are designed, most of the time when there's decisions like these, particularly about sort of, earthly practical things, we are not going to be given a direct answer from God, because we are supposed to engage our own rationality and discernment. That's part of our spiritual development, to look at things and, think about our ethics and our principles and practical things, and use that ability that God has given to go ahead and make a decision. And the other thing is, in any decisions about what to do in business or personal life or whatever, I find it helpful to never worry about, is this the exact right decision? It just look at it as a decision that you're going to make as best you can, researching everything possible, and then trust that God's going to guide you. You just take a step and trust that God's going to unfold it as it goes. And it brings to mind the story in the book of Exodus of the children of Israel come to the Red Sea, and they're told to cross this sea, but it's just this big body of water. And God tells Moses to tell the children of Israel to go forward before they know how it's going to work. And when they start walking forward, then the sea parts. And so I always think of that in terms of when I'm not sure what to do, definitely pray and ask for guidance and everything, but then just go forward as best you can and trust that God's going to be unfolding it as you go along if you don't feel some certain guidance.
Good practical advice, and really, you can't always get it laid out exactly like you want, but there you've got a formula that allows you to feel like, well, I've covered my bases here. So that gives us some confidence going in. Chelsea.
I similarly was thinking of it in terms of like, I feel like there's a decision-making like the decision, how we make a decision is more important than the decisions we make, and what we, the process that we go through. 'Cause, the Lord can work with us no matter what our decisions are, and is always sort of helping us, grow spiritually through that. And so in terms of, how to get, and similarly, even when we don't know what we're doing, kind of like what Karen was saying, if we're not sure what to do, but we're about to take some action, we can, pray for the Lord's will to be done, and then go and do this thing. And whatever it is, know that maybe this is going to work out or not, but the Lord's will is going to take care of how it unfolds, like Karen was saying. And, but one of the things, some ideas that help me, in that process, because it's like, well, how do we know what the Lord's will is? And we won't know the specifics, but we can know, are we in alignment with what the Lord cares about, and with, like what we understand the Lord's will to be, and in sort of big picture ideas. And, so one element is like, can we do this thing and have a clean conscience? Like, does it in any way go against what gives me a sense of, this is fine? If it's going out of bounds, then like probably not the deal to make. And is it useful? How is it, what is the use that it could serve in the world or not? And then also kind of one that might take some time of reflection is really, where are my intentions coming from with this business deal? Like, and there might be a whole mix of stuff going on inside about, well, it does forward my, whatever career or whatever it is. But, if you can sort of even pray for the Lord's help and like, help me be honest with myself about what am I really in this for? And even if there is gain for me involved in it, is it ultimately to serve a higher purpose? And if so, then great. Like that's something, the Lord can work with. And so then, and the one other element to all this that I find so fascinating that really helps me in my life is this interesting stuff that Swedenborg says about how, like, to try to hold the goals that we have, like, kind of lightly. When we get really caught up in a conviction that we have of like, this is the way things have to be, we can kind of easily end up going off track with what the Lord really wants to have happen, or the way providence would have, would ideally have things unfold. And so there's sort of this element of like, I want to do this, but let's see if the Lord opens a way for it, and if I'm finding myself up against a lot of resistance, then, or something, like there's just an interesting, intuitive way to work through feeling out those, like, moment by moment, is this something to push for or not? And ultimately kind of let go of the outcome, like that it's all the Lord's work anyway. So like it's not up to what I make happen or something. So hope those thoughts are helpful.
Yeah, because then no matter what the outcome is, you've made some spiritual progress, in your ability to navigate an uncertain life. Cara.
Yeah, that was my thought too, was these kinds of decisions are just a great opportunity for us to exercise building our own sense of who we are, establishing what our values are, what would be an integrity for us. So it's just one of those learning curves. Every decision like that is one of the learning curves on finding out who you are in your spirit and what your relationship with God is. So I think that God does speak to us inside, but it's not always easy to hear that voice. I mean, it takes all these processes and thought experiments and things to figure it out sometimes.
Excellent. Yeah, we just gotta walk through it and see what we pick up. I would say if it was me approaching that and I were to be trying to get myself into my highest frame of principles, how would I really want to approach this ideally? There's a couple of things that I would be trying to apply. One of them is I'm not making that decision. As much as it seems like I'm going to decide, ultimately forces beyond you are going to make that decision. The whole human existence is set up to feel like, well, I've got to weigh this and now I weighed it and but just Swedenborg describes divine providence moving your thought processes, setting limits on where it can go. And ultimately, there is the decision. Providence is the real mover and shaker here. So, to have some sense of like, well, I know that you'll make the decision for me, and I find that can actually alleviate some of the stress going into it. And right alongside that, it's a blind decision because none of us know what something's really going to lead to. I mean, the deal going the way, you could take the deal and it could lead to some riches, but some negative spiritual stuff. You could take the deal, it could turn out poorly in an earthly sense, but really teach you something that is eternal spiritually. We just don't know. I mean, we don't know what we want. And how many times have I really thought I wanted something that it wouldn't have been good for me to get at all? So the only thing, and I think this echoes what everyone was saying, that we can really try to pick up in these situations is use your rationality to the best of your ability, knowing that God is making the decision and God is the only one who knows the outcome. So here's a chance to build spiritual muscles. That's the only thing we can know consistently that we can do. Great question, though. I mean, because wouldn't it be so nice? Maybe eventually we get to that perception where God's really sort of tapping you on the shoulder, turn left, turn right. Okay. So let's move to the next one. Hey, before we do, go to offtheleftout.com/donate. We're halfway through the show and we're only 12% of the way to our stretch goal. Are we going to make it? Even if, don't be daunted by the total amount. If we don't make it there, your donation still goes just as far, and your next little gift may inspire the next person, and so on and so on. Isaac Quay asks, what exactly did Moses refer to in his prayer in Psalm 90:12 when he said, "Teach us to number our days that we may gain a heart of wisdom"? It's a beautiful, oft quoted verse. What is a heart of wisdom? Yeah, if I'm going to go around numbering my days, it better be worth it. What are we going to get out of this? Chelsea.
Yeah, well, it goes right with what we were just talking about, where wisdom and another quality Swedenborg sort of equates with true wisdom is innocence. And how he defines that is a willingness to be led by the Lord. Like this, just giving it your all is, completely putting yourself in the Lord's hands and living your life in an alignment in that way is what wisdom is. And wisdom is the way of getting there. And so in the Bible, it's kind of, there's so much talk about wisdom and what it means to be, to have a heart of wisdom. I'm thinking of, in Proverbs and stuff, there's a long, there's just so many different cool aspects and when you sort of take in the totality of it, this heart of wisdom is really just, is one that has that alignment with God's will and is really just, that's its one pointed focus, and everything else is the, to the periphery of that.
Love it. A lot. Yeah, that the alignment on what's important is what matters. That's so cool. It's so memorable. Hey, before we go to the next person, let's say thanks to Stephanie.
Woohoo!
Stephanie donated. We're now a quarter of the way to our goal. So thank you so much. And no matter what your donation goes to, helping these programs to happen. So anything, Cara or Karin, about the heart of wisdom? What heart of wisdom are you trying to gain, in your life? Yeah, Karin.
I loved what Chelsea had to say about what a heart of wisdom means, just the kind of wisdom that informs us about the Lord's will and the Lord's love and how to bring that into life. And I just did a quick lookup of what the number our days means. Teach us to number our days, because I was curious about that. And Swedenborg learned that means to number your days means to review your life and to allow it to be set into order, into the Lord's order. So it is, the verse is saying, asking God to help us to look over our life and, learn to prioritize, set things in order that aligns with the Lord's order, which makes us wise, which makes us informed about the Lord's love and how to operate from that.
I love that. I want to do that so bad. Look at my life and order it. I just crave that. And I guess this goes back to the business deal. I just craved some direct input. How do I do that? What do I do? Do I move my dresser onto this wall over here? What am I going to do to order that? Set your life in divine order. And we do have the basic principles where you can say, okay, what are my priorities? All the Swedenborg stuff. That's so exciting to think that there is a potential way you could organize your life to harmonize with divine order, whatever that means. But I'm in. I want to do it. Let's do it. Okay, Cara, what do you think?
The word, and I'm not sure if Chelsea said this or not because I was off on my own thoughts, but the word that comes to mind is humility, a humbleness. Again, just us in relation to God's will and God's wisdom, putting ourselves in the right hierarchy there in relation to what the Lord has to offer us. So humility and humbleness.
And that's the starting point. I love it. That was what makes us receptive of all the other instructions that would allow us to conform with whatever the order is looking for. So great. Oh, that's a great question. Thanks so much, everyone, for your responses. And thanks to Julia, who gave. And we're up to 32% of our goal. I mean, it's happening. It's not impossible. This is from Young at Heart, who asks, what does Swedenborg say about remorse? It's sort of a bit of a rarer bird to talk about remorse, but it's really like a deep kind of, I think of like a string music kind of like cello with it. It's an elegant sort of take on regret, right? Well, what is remorse and what does Swedenborg say? Cara?
Well, that word remorse, different things along that line are coming to me. And one is that Swedenborg talks about spurious guilt. So remorse is when you feel sorry about something you've done, you wish you hadn't done it, something like that. And his message about spurious guilt is that sometimes we and he talks about people being over conscientious and making themselves guilty of things that they don't need to be carrying guilt about. I think part of that is just his setup that everything evil flows into us from hell, everything good flows into us from heaven. We are not identified with either one of those things, except for our choices are sort of navigating between them all the time. And so, and again, to me, it comes to falling back into the Lord's providence about this has been part of my journey. Maybe there's a lesson to learn from whatever this thing is that I'm feeling remorseful about. but God has it in the big picture. So those are some scattered thoughts around the topic.
Scattered, but scattered in the right direction, because you hit on a couple of key things that I really love. And I'm glad that you started with the spurious conscience, because how many people are pinned down by regretting things that they don't need to regret? And I use that in my little head when I'm going around and feeling upset or guilt about something that I know is not really worth that. I will say, like, false conscience. And if I didn't have that concept that there is such a thing, because guilt seems like such a thing, such a unlet go of a ball emotion, because if you have any goodness in your heart, you feel like, well, I should pay attention to making sure I'm not doing something bad. But to know that there are times when you are drawn to feel that way, when it's not really something worth getting all tied up in knots about, such a powerful concept. Yeah. Other stuff, Karin.
Yeah, I'm glad Cara started and you elaborated, Curtis, on that negative kind of remorse that kind of takes over, because so many people go through years of feeling an unhealthy kind of remorse that just burdens them and is not useful. And there's a very healthy kind of remorse and an unhealthy kind of remorse. And the healthy kind of remorse is just a feeling of regret that would make you determined not to do something again. Like you fully realize how it harmed somebody, for instance. And I've read places where Swedenborg talks about, in our spiritual journey and our spiritual purification, a feeling of remorse is crucial for letting go of something. Like, oh, I get it, that really did some harm or hurt somebody. I don't want it anymore. You need to have this aversion to something that's been in your habits or something you've done. You have to have an aversion to it to really let go of it. Because sometimes you can, I'm not doing that anymore, but you don't think it's that bad. And so maybe it's going to crop up again. And if you have some remorse, that means you are letting go. But that said, the problem is hell wants to take us and just keep us forever in that remorse when as soon as we have genuine remorse, we are detaching from that tendency to do that thing. And so we don't need to stay in that remorse. We just have to hold in our memory somewhere, which God does for us, to remember, I don't want to be that anymore. I don't want to do that anymore. But to go back over it and feel those guilt feelings again and again, that's not useful and that's unhealthy. And that's not something that God wants. So the healthy remorse is just feeling enough that you get it. Like, no, I don't want to be that anymore. And thus you really let go of it. And then you let it go, it's just part of your wisdom now, talking about wisdom, like it's part of your wisdom that now I know something that I don't want to be.
Sometimes, remorse can feel pretty good or kind of exciting. I find when it's the constructive kind, there'll be attitudes or things I stood for or endorsed when I was younger that now I look at it and say, that's not cool to be like that. That's not good at all. And I'm glad that I don't like that anymore. It's sort of exciting because you're focused. Maybe one way we can slightly tell them apart is when you're focused on the good that's behind it. And if you don't like speaking about people behind their back, you just think of how good it is for people to be able to trust each other and respect each other. And that's what you're excited about. And of course, I disown the times that I did that. I don't want to do it, rather than I can't believe that I am so bad, because it's really like still a self-focused thing. If you're focusing, I can't believe I'm bad. Yeah, you're bad. We're all bad. That's fine. I mean, we all are hereditary evil, and we do things, and you got stuff on your plate. That's not the issue. The issue is in the end, what do we think is great? Do we justify and defend our negativity, or do we say, no, what's really good is what's fair and just to everyone? There can be times when that's exciting. I'm like, yeah, I'm glad that I'm clear on, and now since I had this part of this evil I'd been doing, I can be part of the solution by, not standing for that anymore and making amends where I can, but otherwise moving on and embracing the opposite. So, hey, let's talk about Natalie. Natalie donated, and now we're all the way up to 38% of our goal. we're feeling great. Thank you so much, everyone, for the for you making the car go forward. I'm thinking that's a pretty elegant metaphor, a car, and like inching along like gas or electricity. Okay, so let's do another one. This is from Steve Willits, who asks, I find it very easy to tell others what's right and wrong, but I haven't got a clue when dealing with myself. What am I missing? Yeah, that's my specialty too. So what is it? Yeah, what's the difference between looking out at other people and looking at oneself? That's one thing, but also why is it confusing to try to pin down what we should or shouldn't be remorseful about and that sort of thing? Yeah, did I see anyone? Oh, Karin, did you want to say something?
Sure, I'll get it started. Yeah, well, you're in good company. That's a hard thing to do. It's it's very easy to see what I think is not the right way to be in other people, and much harder to see it in yourself most of the time. But that is the spiritual work of our lives, and it's a gradual process. And I would say, to get started, I see it as learning as much as I can about what from a biblical sense of point of view, what are those 10 commandments really about? And so there's these 10 commandments, which are sort of these basic things that we need to watch out for and to not have in our lives. And there's some very obvious meanings of like, don't kill, don't commit adultery, but there's deeper meanings. And Jesus actually talked about some of those deeper meanings. And then when Swedenborg got this revelation from the Lord, even more. And so that is a whole lot of good information to reflect on in yourself, and to just take, Swedenborg says, just look and taking one thing at a time, like just reflecting on, is there a way that I am doing this to somebody? Once you are realizing what these different commandments are really saying, because they're all just about like, don't harm other people. And of course that can include yourself too. Don't harm yourself, don't harm other people. And so what are all those ways we can purposely or inadvertently, not on purpose, hurt other people and do harm? It's a gradual process of learning that. Kind of like with your body, you're gradually learning what harms it and what helps it. You can be gradually learning what harms and helps your spiritual life, which is the same thing as what is harming or helping other people. And so it's a matter of learning what harm is, all the different facets of it, and then looking in on yourself and being honest about like, is there anywhere in my life that I'm doing that to myself or others? And just reflecting on that and taking one thing at a time. It's a gradual learning process.
Gradual learning. Those are two key elements of it. There's a number somewhere in Swedenborg where he's talking about our love of self or our love of dominion or something, and he says it does not want to be found. It like maybe it's easier to see in other people because other people's evils don't know us as well as ours do, so they don't know how to disguise them in the way that we know it's our own stuff. Swedenborg talks about it like a spider in its web that grabs all these falsities to try to justify it. So of course I'm not mean, I'm just tired. I'm not mean, I just something. So it is work, and to maybe that's part of the answer is to see it as, yeah, we don't have a clue, but that's because just like if I was like, I'm not in shape. Why am I not in shape? Well, I gotta start working. So I've been doing this like exercise video game, and I'm on like day 114, and I definitely feel better now, but I didn't feel better on day 2. It does take a lot of working. Other thoughts or feelings or anything? All right, Chelsea, I think you're muted.
Yeah, I was thinking about that Swedenborg does even spell out, you can search it in his works, I don't have on hand the exact number, but where he spells out what the steps of repentance are, and he gives them, lays them out as steps. And that's like one of the things is, it isn't apparent to us, like Curtis was saying. It's very easy to feel blind to our own issues. And so we kind of do need to go after it actively. And Swedenborg says that, just a couple of times a year even is enough to like really be honest with yourself, sit down, go through some sort of a process where you do practice this kind of reflection, where you in the 12 steps, you talk about taking an inventory of yourself or something, like just what's going on, and what's one issue that you could maybe work on, like Karin was saying, and just have that be your focus. And in the kind of sort of Swedenborgian world, so to speak, like the people in the world who are doing a lot of programs and things have taken this idea, and turned it into a lot of different sort of offerings, like having these spiritual growth groups where you just sort of given at random a task, a spiritual growth task, and you apply that to yourself and you work on that one thing. Like it kind of gives you something to focus on if you're having a hard time. Like, well, where do I start? I'm not like actively going against any of the, 10 commandments or something like that, but it's like, it gives you one sort of spiritual truth that how could I apply this to my life? And it just can be that little, process of maybe opening up to starting to see things that you didn't see before in your behaviors, and just continuing on your path to connecting with God. And I think, so one of them's called choosejoynow.com. That's like or .org, I think, Choose Joy Now. But that's a cool whole collection of spiritual growth tasks. There's also something called New Church Journey, the Journey program, I think. And that has a whole great backlog of sort of things you can work on. Same with the book that's called Rise Above It, specifically takes the 10 commandments and turns them into a weekly little task for you to like help you think about how might I, be a little more conscious around different issues in my life. So those are some thoughts.
Resources. If it's real serious work, how do you do any real serious work? You've got to have programs. It's structure. Wasn't I just a second ago saying I'm exercising because I've got this exercise video game that tells me what to do every single day? Ring Fit Adventure for the Nintendo Switch. So awesome. Every single day tells me, do this exercise, run this. I'm keeping track of it. That is a big help, man. So to get these programs and figure out for you what's going to keep you doing the work. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, here we are. We got 7 minutes left, and we got a lot to raise to get to our goal. Is it going to happen? It won't unless you get on there, offtheleftout.com/donate. We'll see if we can make our holidays stretch. Okay, are we ready to take another question from Erica Lee?
I think Karin had something you were going to say.
Add another resource, beginanewlife.org, I think it's called. And also take the simple golden rule. It's just a place to start, and you can just going through your day, see if you notice anything you do that maybe you wouldn't like done to you. So it's just, you can start simple like that.
Nice. That's great.
Nice. Yeah, just go try something on someone and then like, I don't think I'd want that done to me. Okay, Erica Lee asks, does Swedenborg speak about patience? All these years of spiritual progress, and I still feel like I'm waiting for a light that never comes. Does having little patience link up to a lack of stamina? How come we're putting in this work and it's like, I think Chelsea, you mentioned something about this at the beginning of the show. I'm still here. Right. I'm still dealing with this stuff. So when if we're feeling a little antsy, like when is this stuff going to kick in? What advice can y'all give to that?
Well, one thing that just comes to mind right off the bat is this verse that I don't remember the chapter and verse, but I know it says, let the weak one say, I am strong. And I love that flip on, there's a lot of places in the Bible that subverts our sense of what are sort of the highest virtues of like strength and patience and stuff like that, when it's like, actually, it's totally okay. If you're feeling weak, you might be in a better place than you thought you were, the meek and, I don't think it spells out impatient, but I hope it's in there because I'm with you on that one.
The impatient will inherit the get to the point.
Yeah. And so so I don't think having little patient links up to a lack of stamina. I just think it's so natural that, yeah, there's a lot going on and it's hard to have patience with a lot of stuff. And, but that in itself is something to, with all of these things, the first step is just having awareness of it without judging it, like without making right or wrong, but just like, okay, I'm feeling impatient right now. What do I do with that? But anyway, those are some initial thoughts.
Yeah. And I think you saw me expressing some impatience earlier in this show. In Erica's question, it says, all these years of spiritual progress, and I still feel like I'm waiting for a light that never comes. And I'm reading that as I want to feel more spiritual or have things click into place more. And earlier in this show, I was saying, I want to know, what does God want me to do in my life right now? Or this thing. It was terrible impatience. But the reason that I'm doing it is because I care and I really want it. So I think probably a little impatience is good if it's something really important. If you think about causes that people really feel like are this has got to happen, and no, we don't have time to go another year without it happening. There's some good impatience as well.
Mm-hmm.
Although, yeah, it's definitely at times it's just because, at times on the flip side of it, it's like me saying, well, I need this thing, God. And it's just like the business deal we're talking about. How do I know I need that right now? I mean, there's a lot of things my daughter wants that I wonder if that's really what you need right now. She's 5. So I can have that perspective, but so it just like we are the child, right? We gotta, that the toughest thing in the world is to trust God that doesn't take directions from you. It's so hard. I'm not saying it's easy. It's super hard. Okay. Any other thoughts, Karin?
Yeah, I think one thing that can help with patience, especially with yourself and your own evolvement, is to maybe shift your expectations. Because if you're thinking, I should be blank by now, or, I should be getting it more than I am or something, that could just be like the expectation is not realistic or not accurate. As long as we're in earthly life, we're pretty blocked. I mean, it's just even just being here in a physical body, we're not going to get all the way there, and we're not supposed to. It's just a beginning of our evolvement, and we're just doing some basic preparing and getting started here in this world. But we're not supposed to, if you haven't become fully enlightened, or feel frustrated that you seem to have similar patterns going on, that's okay. And Swedenborg says that Jesus, his whole earthly life was still going through these struggles of temptations and things. And that continued all the way until his death. And I think about that sometimes, that, if I'm impatient, that I'm supposed to be at peace and have, always have the right motivation and, whatever. I don't think that's the right expectation to have during this life. The expectation is just, I keep trying my best and trust that God's working on the process. And only God knows at what pace it can work for us in our individual journeys. We're so complex. There's so many elements to our spirits, and God is working on all of them in a very careful order. And things get evolved at a certain pace that will work for us. So I think if you can just become more accepting of where you are and say, I do want the Lord's light in my life, and I trust that the Lord's working on that, and to not put certain expectations on what that should look like in my life exactly, but just trust it's happening. You want it, the Lord will get you there. It's going to continue in the afterlife. So that can help.
The Jesus example is so crucial, because I always forget that. But if I were to look at my life and where do I want it to go? Well, how did Jesus' life go? He, died at 33 violently. I'm thinking of this particular line when he goes and gives some speech, and it says most of his followers left him. He was not succeeding. He had 12 main followers that one of them turned him into the authorities. The other one denied him 3 times to save himself. It wasn't this glamorous thing. It didn't if I'm thinking, how can my life get ordered so it's really working? How ordered was his life? From the beginning, when he was a baby, he had to get born out in a horse trough. It just seems like, right. What do we know? And yet that life was accomplishing this amazing eternal thing. So how do we know what is going well and what's not going well in our lives?
Yeah.
I just love it. So thanks for bringing that up.
I want to add that just real quick that even just looking at the external things Jesus was going through, Swedenborg says the whole Old Testament with all those battles that go on and on and on, and that's what Jesus was dealing with internally. It's representing his inner life. And so it just earthly life, that's how it goes. And but that's okay. That's it's getting us places. It's accomplishing spiritual growth and purification, even if we're not all the way there to peace yet.
Yeah, right. So if you're struggling, you're in good company.
I appreciate that a lot, Karin. And I just want to add in my sympathy with Erica. I really have a problem with patience with myself, with the people in my household, with the drivers on the road. Like there's all kinds of levels of patience, and it's a tough one. So thanks, Karin. I'll try to have different expectations.
If somebody was trying to be patient about this show ending, they would be pointing out that we're 2 minutes over right now. I could do this for quite a long time, but we're going to cut it off here. Thanks so much, everybody, for watching. I guess I can't say it's been a great year because we're talking about 2020, right? The global pandemic, right, is a problem. But as far as like the Swedenborg and life and getting to do all this Swedenborg Live with all of you at home, it has been a great year. I mean, I've just loved getting to hear all your questions. They've been so insightful. I've loved getting to hear all the answers from everyone on the panel. So thanks so much, everybody. And thanks to people who donated today. We had 4 donors. We raised $150. It's going to go into our programming, and we are very grateful for helping us launch into 2021 and what we'll do there. I want to say we're going to be off for 2 weeks. There's a Christmas and then New Year's around here, and we're gearing up for this programming we're going to do in the new year. So we're going to have our heads down for a little bit. Doesn't mean there's not tons of content on our channel all over the place. We'll be back on January 11th with an episode of Swedenborg and Life that's called CEOs Reveal the Spiritual Component of Running a Successful Business, which I'm very excited about that episode and all it could mean. Thanks, panel. That was a great conversation.
Yep. Thanks, everybody. That was delightful. And I wish everybody a Merry Christmas or whatever it is you celebrate at this time of year.
Well, yeah, thank you, everyone, for the wonderful questions and your wonderful presence there in the chat. It's a delight. And yeah, wishing you wonderful, blessed holidays.
Yep. Thanks so much, everybody. I second everything Karin said.
Hey, and as a Christmas gift to us, Young at Heart just made a donation. So now we're actually up to 180. Seriously, thank you. I know that money is a hard thing to let go of. And we take very seriously the responsibility of putting yours to good work. And we just love being in this with all of you. So thanks so much. Take it easy, everybody. We'll see you all the time. We'll be here all the time. And we just love hanging out. So I hope you have a great rest of your day.